On this episode of Team Building Saves the World.
Everybody has to feel empowered to be able to be a true version of themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, whether you're in the Fortune 100 C-suite or you're the bench warmer on the sixth grade basketball team, you can lead from exactly where you are. I'm not going to be that. I would love to be 6 foot, but it's never going to happen, right?
Yeah, I was going to say thank you, but I'm only 5'9". So.
There you go. See, exactly. So same boat.
Hello, team. It's me, your old friend Rich Rinnensland, host of Team Building Saves the World, the show where I speak to thought leaders from around the world discussing variable strategies and tools to help you and your team build a better work environment. And today, we're going to talk about your right to equality in the workplace with noted speaker, equality advocate, and author of Step Up, How to Live with Courage and Become an Everyday Leader, Ash Beckham. But first, I do have to share some love with all of my supporters at Team Bonding. If your team is ready to experience teamwork through the power of play, then visit teambonding.com to learn more. Now, team, I'm so excited. Please join me in welcoming my guest, advocate, author, and viral sensation since the release of her TEDx talk, Coming Out of Your Closet, Ash Beckham. Ash, good morning. How are you, my friend? Thank you so much for coming on.
I'm great, Rich. So excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. Seriously. Let's start off, if we can, the way I normally do with guests, just to introduce them to my team out there. Tell them a little bit about yourself and how this course became your life's work.
Yeah, it was kind of like all of us, right? You kind of like find your calling by accident, by tripping into it, right? I was doing a bunch of different things in life, trying to kind of make my way, and was out in my little community, but not an advocate, I would say, certainly not an activist. And then realized that, I don't know, I just wasn't a jump up on the soapbox with the picket sign kind of marching gal. That kind of wasn't my way, but also knew that there needed to be change, right? And so it just kind of happened by having conversations, and started doing a little bit of public speaking here and there, and got some traction online, and because it was kind of off on my way. And then that went from, kind of straight up diversity, equity work to more of the inclusion, belonging, leadership work as I went along the path. And now it's kind of, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, as they say. So that is the path that I'm on, and I have so much gratitude for it. And I've met amazing people, and love what you guys are doing, and feels like it's such a great fit. I'm excited for the conversation.
Fantastic. Thanks. So let's talk about equity. Let's talk about equality. Let's talk about all of this. Why, first off, do you feel, in your own words, that it's important in the workplace in order to have that equality?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think any of us that are in anything that involves a team, and certainly in the workplace, but that happens in our communities, on our athletic teams, on our PTOs, right? If you have a team, you thrive when you're getting the best from everyone.
Right.
Right. And everybody has to feel empowered to be able to be a true version of themselves, right? Not necessarily what you want, an authentic version of yourself. And if they don't feel equity, if they don't feel inclusion, if they don't feel valued for who they are, not in spite of who they are, you're not going to get their best. And just like purely on a numbers game, you're losing efficiency, right? If I have to think about whether or not I can tell you I'm married to a woman, if I have to think about whether I have to tell you that I'm taking care of my older parent, the challenges that I face based on my race or my religious, if I have to tell you the challenges, if I have to think about whether or not I can share those challenges with you, that is money that is not going towards what we're all rowing in the same boat for, right? So I think that on a numbers perspective, so you can kind of hit it two ways, right? You can hit the head or you can hit the heart. You can hit the head, you want people to be efficient, and we're losing efficiency. We're losing work hours when people are covering for who they are, right? When they can't trust, when they can't fully show up. And then on the more heart end of it, we want people to feel like they belong, right? We don't want it to just be a job. None of us are in this just for the job piece, right? If we're interested enough in team building to be listening to the two of us speak, right?
Exactly.
And we're motivated to do that, and our hearts are in it too. So we want people to feel that. And when they feel like they belong, they trust, they lean in, they're willing to go the extra mile, right? All the things that we want from our team.
I like to think that it's also that we're both so remarkably charming that they just want to listen to us
obviously,
anyway.
yeah, for sure.
Good. Okay. So let's talk about what you've seen so far in the workplace. I mean, people, of course, calling you, hiring you to either talk or to, have lectures or what have you for these people. What kind of things are you seeing right now that are either still in need of being fixed or you're seeing that repair happening?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it kind of depends on the organization. A lot of times that is industry specific, right? In where they land relative to that. I think everybody knows it's important. Everybody knows it exists. I think where we're at right now is in that process. Is it just something you have on paper? Is it just in the employee manual, or is it something that's actually in practice? That's kind of the biggest one. And that was, to a certain extent, part of the impetus of the book, right? I would go in and I would talk to these organizations, whether it was at a conference or a specific organization, on things like team building, how to create more efficient teams, more authentic communication, things like that. And people would come up to me afterwards and say, Ash, it's so great. I love what you said. When I ... I'm going to implement that, right? When I have this many direct reports, when I have this job title, when I get this degree, there was always like something to achieve to be a leader in that way. And that was kind of the point of the Everyday Leadership book, is no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, whether you're in the Fortune 100 C-suite or you're the bench warmer on the 6th grade basketball team, you can lead from exactly where you are, right?
Nice.
And so how do we empower people that they have everything they need? It's a practice. It's something you get better at, but you have everything you need to be a leader. And it isn't the way that we always see leaders portrayed, right? It's not like the, over 6 foot straight white guy who's good looking that's what we see a lot. But at the same time, like, all of us can lead, but I'm not going to be that. I would love to be 6 foot, but it's never going to happen. Right.
Yeah. I was going to say thank you, but I'm only 5'9".
There you go. See, exactly. So same boat. So when we go that direction, we have to see that these skills are not just, you're not like ordained a leader, right? There's things that we develop, things we can work on, things that are already our strengths, and things that we can pursue, because there's these 8 components of leadership, and however you look at it, they say, every time, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And the point of this book was different situations require a different set of skills to be the leader that you want to be. And if we know all of these skills, then we can decide, I need a little bit more humility. Oh, I need a little bit more courage in this one. I need a little bit more individuality. We can kind of select what's going to fit the situation best. So that was, all of that, all the speaking that I was doing and conversations I was having, that's what I felt was most needed, was empowerment for everybody at every level.
Speaking of these 8 pillars of yours from the book, Step Up, which do you think people are mostly struggling with nowadays? What are you seeing that, because I don't want you to have to. I want people to go buy the book for you, Ash.
Sure. But, right. Yeah.
So I don't want you to give away
give you all 8.
Yeah. Don't give away the candy store. But let's talk about the ones you're seeing right now, especially in this day and age, the way that the market is now.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I feel like authenticity is the hardest thing to do, because I think on so many levels and for me, everything, there's 2 sides to every coin, right? I think that people are going to a workplace, you go in, especially you're going in somewhere new, and can I fully be myself? Is this place safe? If I have a diversity of any kind, seen, unseen, not kind of the traditional diversities, but I have different work requirements, right? I have different healthcare requirements. I have all these different things that I need. Am I going to be valued as somebody that contribute, again, because of that, not in spite of that? Then at the same time, I think the other side of the coin is, I feel like diversity, equity, and inclusion is a really tough spot right now, right? Like it's been politicized as it need not be.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we've created a cancel culture where you can have the best intentions, but you say the wrong thing or you slip. And I think that there's a fear that is potentially ruining your career.
Right.
And so we don't really, so I guess it would be authenticity, but then what's coupled with that is grace for ourselves as people that are growing and learning and moving through this process, because what diversity looked like 5 years ago is different than what it looked like 50 years ago. And how are we constantly changing, right? It's nothing we're ever going to figure out. But at the same time, how do we give people the grace that are going through that one miss, like if somebody's trying and they mess it up, how do we be allies to people that are aspiring allies, right? How do we step in and fill that void? And it isn't a pass fail, right? It's an evolution for all of us. How can we be just a little bit more gentle in that way too?
How do we do that though? Like, what are some steps we can take? Because the hardest thing in the world would have to be trying to explain to somebody why I should be allowed to tell you who I am.
Right. Absolutely. I think that you need to take that same, I think it has to be organizational, right? It has to be honored by the organization, but it has to happen at all levels. It takes the braveness and the vulnerability of our leaders to be able to step in and say, hey, I'm constantly going to check in. One of the things that we always want to do is think about who we could be leaving behind. Like, it isn't the responsibility of people that are, identify with a certain diversity to rectify those changes, to go and say, well, this is the non-inclusive language that you're using. We need allies to do that, because when allies are doing it, there's a more altruistic lens to it, right? It's an evolution that we're doing collectively. When it's me advocating for myself individually, that seems much more self-serving, right? And you're much less likely potentially to be able to accept that, as opposed to we collectively are moving forward. And so we are not going to use gender specific language in any of our marketing, right? Like, we've moved beyond that. It's an evolution when we're coming to it collectively, and that's just impossible to do without allies.
And I loved one of the things that I heard you talking about in one of your TEDx's. I can't remember the title of it, but it's the one where you talk about taking your niece to go see Anna and Elsa.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Guys, my team out there, if you ever get a chance, please go find Ash and her TEDx talks. They are not only humorous, but also very meaningful. But you talked about the duality of the self, how you can be both an aunt to this child and an advocate at the same time. How do we teach people that they can be that for themselves, and then therefore teach others that they can be that, we can make this all spread down the line?
Yeah, I think I think the first step is to see ourselves as multidimensional, right? That we are never just one thing. Like, I have my hat that I put on, but it's impossible for me to have this conversation with you and not know that my kid's upstairs and he was sick last night and coughed all night long, right? Like, it is a small portion of my brain, but to say that there's not 5% of my ear that's listening to make sure he's okay. And just friends, my wife's upstairs. Not like I left my 6-year-old alone upstairs, but still, like, there's the part up there, just wanting to hear him running, because then I know he's feeling better. Right. Yeah. That I am both of those things at the same time. I am no less engaged in this conversation. Right. I'm also a small business owner. I also have an aging parent, right? Like, I am multi-dimensional in all of the things. I can feel going into any project, right? I can feel excited to do this podcast, and I can feel a little bit of anxiety at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive, right? My emotions, my existence, my roles, all the things that I do are not mutually exclusive. It is this mosaic of who I am. We have to be able to see our coworkers and our team members in that same way, that they are not just a singular entity, a singular emotion. They're not, a job title, or it's not transactional. Right? That it is more layered than that. So we have to first acknowledge it in ourselves, right? And that I can bring those pieces, that I can say to you in this conversation, hey, I'm a little bit distracted today because I've got a sick kiddo. Yeah. Right? Or the fundraiser is happening, or the church event is, you know what I mean? It's like, we have all of these things, and I don't have to tell you everything to tell you enough, right? I don't have to divulge all of my deepest, darkest secrets to give you enough to show you my humanity, right? That those are completely different things. And that's, authenticity and transparency are different in that way.
Well, we're going to get to your deepest, darkest secrets a little later in the show.
Oh, absolutely. I got plenty of time. I'm wide open.
Ash, this is fantastic, but I hope you don't mind. Real quick, I just need to step away. Because, of course, I have to tell all my team out there about the company I am very proud to be a part of, Team Bonding. Team Bonding was founded over 20 years ago with one simple question: how can employees have a great time while fostering strong, authentic bonds between people who work together? No matter where your company is located, Team Bonding offers powerful, engaging, custom team building events designed to get the best out of your team anywhere in the world. They've created a catalog of innovative events using the power of play as a learning tool and tapping into the correlation of work and play. So whether it's scavenger hunts to Jeopardy or so many more, the team bonding of activities, whether they're live, virtual, or hybrid, maximizes the impact of team building with an accent on fun. So visit teambonding.com to schedule your event now. Team Bonding, when you want seriously fun results. And speaking of seriously fun, we're continuing the seriously fun conversation with Ash Beckham. Ash, let's look at it from another direction, if you don't mind. What can companies do now to actually help implement the things you've been talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in any organization, what gets measured gets changed. So how are we incorporating in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, or however it's framed within your organization? A lot of people have moved, DEI has kind of become a little bit of a lightning rod. So now it's just belonging, right? This cultural sense of belonging.
Yeah.
How is that incorporated into not only like team planning, individual reviews, right? Like, how is that a component of something we're actually measuring? Okay. And it's less, it doesn't necessarily land on an Excel sheet, but we can be moving in the right direction, right? That we're trending in the way of trying, and whatever that looks to us, like to us individually, right?
Right.
How can we individually set those goals to be able to do that and then be held accountable for things like that?
But how can they still do that? And because it's the way of the world, especially, God forbid, right now, where when you have one point, someone is going to be yelling the counterpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the biggest reason we're having the conversation of diversity, equity, inclusion, again, on that numbers line, is because diverse teams perform better. They're better at problem solving. They're better at recruitment and retention. Right. They outperform their industry median. Like, the numbers are there, the diversity, but it's not, just because correlation is not causation. Just because you have the numbers, it's not a recipe, right? You're like, I have 6 of these and 3 of these and 2 of those, right? Like, it isn't that. Those people have to feel like they can bring that perspective. My go-to example is, like, you don't want me, if you're running an ad agency and you just landed the Subaru account, you don't want me because I'm a lesbian. Right? Like, I might have insights to selling Subarus to a specific demographic that outperforms in that purchase year over year, right? You want me because the path that I have taken to get to this spot in my life has been different than other people on the team. Therefore, I have different insights. One of my favorite examples is there was this team activity where you had one team that was very homogeneous, and they had to put together, and the teams had to put together their recipe that required ketchup, right?
Okay.
And one team was very homogeneous, and one was ethnically diverse and international, right? And so they're doing it. They look at the ketchup, they look in the refrigerator. There's no ketchup, and so they try to come up with something that would be a substitute for ketchup. The other team, international, looks in the cabinet, because where they're from, they keep the ketchup in the cabinet, right? And the ketchup's there. You can't problem solve in that same way because you don't have the historical knowledge. Like, I don't want a bunch of mini-me's. So if we say that's a premise, right, that we are going to recruit and retain better, we're going to have better results, we're going to be more productive, we're going to problem solve better, we're going to be more creative and innovative. Okay. If we accept that premise, which I know that's saying something, but the numbers are there to prove that, then we have to figure out how to get along with people that are different than we are. We have to be able to respectfully disagree. We have to be able to be authentic, and that is conflict. Like, I don't want a team with no conflict. Right. I just need a team that can, in a healthy way, resolve conflict. Yeah. Right. And so that's what it is. So I think you have people. My response to that would be, why? Hopefully, no one's screaming from either side, right? Right. That we know what we're doing, and that doesn't. And you don't need to have everybody on your team doesn't have to be your friend. It's a completely different dynamic. Yeah. But everybody has to feel like they belong, and that is our collective responsibility, not the leader's responsibility. Everybody's responsibility. So we then constantly have a conversation of who feels like they don't belong, right? Who are we forgetting? Who are we leaving behind? And what can we do to change that? I feel like the hybrid work environment is a perfect example of that, right? We have some people that are in person, some people that are, remote. Right. That is challenging, right? That is, in a non-traditional sense, but a diversity. And how do we make people feel like they belong in that environment where they could feel isolated, right? That takes work. it takes intention. You have to be mindful of the fact that if you have somebody on Zoom and they haven't talked for 10 minutes, maybe you muted them by accident, right? Like you have to be mindful of what's happening and how that plays into it. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of effort, but you have to be aware, and ignoring that diversities of any kind exist and everybody's the same. And it's just, equality, not equity, is a huge mistake.
So what's the secret? I mean, have you figured it out? Has anybody made it work?
Yeah, I think there are some organizations that do it. I think one of my favorite ones is Bank of America. They have a series called Hard Conversations. And they have people who come up, and they'll get people from varying levels within the organization. But when there are these supercharged political issues, they will have two people from differing opinions, maybe different backgrounds, and maybe people that are, somebody who's hyper aware and focused on something, somebody who isn't, and they have them have that hard conversation in front, virtually usually, but accessibly virtually, for people to be able to say, okay, like this is how we talk about it. This is the example that we will make of how to have a hard conversation. And it's not easy. You need the support. It's simple, but it's not easy. You need the support around that. So I think that that's part of it. I think having, I think other organizations have done like the evolution of the employee resource group. I think those used to they started a long time ago as support groups, of like people that were like me when I wasn't like anybody else in the room. And now they've really become more educational, because now I think if you have like the LGBTQ employee resource group, like, yes, if you have people that identify as somewhere on the LGBTQ spectrum or allies, that's one thing. But you could also have somebody whose kid just came out to them as trans, and you are the best, the organization has the best resources possible for somebody to be able to help. So what, the blend between personal and professional, I think has never been so evident.
Seriously. Yeah, very much so. I mean, you're talking about in a corporate sense now, and honestly, I'm flashing back to conversations I've had with my own family in recent years, because God knows we all, even though we came up in the same background, are different people with different wants, different needs, different insights. But it's so easy to be triggered by everything nowadays too. I mean, don't you think most employers out there just want people to shut up and do their job anymore?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think that would be ideal, but is that getting the best out of them? And
correct.
How do we learn as a team? Again, on the team, it can vary from team to team what people feel comfortable talking about, right? Like none of this should be forced. It doesn't have to be, but where do we as a team collectively land on, like, we're just not going to talk about politics? Okay, but if you're a government contractor, right, or it's going to significantly impact your workflow, you have to be able to have a conversation about what a change in administration is going to do.
Yeah.
If it doesn't affect social policy, fine. If you're in healthcare, maybe it affects, you know what I mean? It gets really blended. And how do we have parameters? And also, I think part of it is you could have opt-ins where people talk about it, right? We could have a Zoom lunch. We could have something like that. Like, if we want to talk to anybody that's interested, we'll kind of get together and have that conversation. We can vent. But in these other team meetings, when we're with a client, these are the parameters we're going to stay within. We're constantly reevaluating and adjusting, because the way that today's society works, we're constantly pivoting because new things are always happening, right? But I feel like when that happens, we just all need to know because if there's no parameters, if we don't set any of those boundaries, then it can go everywhere, right? And that's, I think, when people get triggered so much more. This is what feels safe. This is where we're going to be. And then we just need to know if we need to make it bigger or smaller. But we kind of start having that conversation, and we collectively decide, obviously with some guidance on what HR would want and what kind of our bigger limitations are, right? But like, how do we decide what our playing field is going to be on our team?
So how do you help an individual? Because you're going to be reaching a remarkably wide audience just with your TEDx talks alone. What would you give as a recommendation to just an individual to help them start on their own process?
Well, I think the first thing is realizing the leader that they want to be, right?
Okay.
And I think that when we move in this direction, right, our biggest piece is empathy. The biggest thing we can possibly do is understand the people that see things differently, whether it's a political point of view or anything else. It isn't, if they're on our team, we have to start with the presumption that they're not stupid and they're not jerks, right? Like, that's kind of our baseline. And I mean, I think any of us, I mean, you have people out there listening might have some jerks on their team, but like, generally speaking, that comes from somewhere.
Okay.
And so how do we get curious as to where that comes from? How are we, what is that viewpoint about? Why are you such a stickler on A, B, and C? Right? Like, it comes from, there's a reason that you did. People don't just like arbitrarily have stances, I don't think, right? Like, there is a history there, and I can understand you better if I know why you voted that way. I know why you decided to be hybrid, or I know why you want to be in the office 5 days a week. Like, if I know more about, there's a why behind everything, right? So if I know more about you, then it humanizes you a little bit. It makes you a little bit less of a villain, and it makes you seem, and I have an understanding that you are intentional and you're not arbitrary and you are thoughtful. It's just different than the process that I had, right? So I think empathy is the first step. I think that we can, like, dip our toe into some of these conversations a little bit. I can create a space where, my cube, my Zoom screen, whatever it is a safe space to have respectful conversations. Again, it doesn't mean that I have to be friends with everybody. I don't have to agree with everybody. That's the best thing about empathy, right? I don't have to agree with someone to be empathetic. Sympathy is a little bit different, right? Like, I just have to be willing, as somebody who's being empathetic, to remove myself from my kind of knowledge set and step my foot in those shoes to see where they are and how they got there. And if I don't have to agree with them, there's really nobody you can't be empathetic for, right? We have a baseline of respect. We have a baseline, there's like certain things that are the parameters, but generally speaking, I can kind of get there with anybody. So I think to just get curious is kind of that first step. And then to create a space of people, and whether those are people at work, you kind of, you come up with your people where you can have those conversations where, hey, I might not say this right. I'm thinking about going to my boss and saying something. How do you think this lands? Right. My boss is, seems to be defaulting to always going to this one team member and not anybody else. And that feels challenging. And I want to kind of call them out on it, but like, how do I frame that from an I instead of a you, kind of accusatory, right? Like, how do you have your people that you can truly have these like practice conversations with, not to gossip, not to have like a side story, right? To truly gain the knowledge and the practice and the resolve to be able to have those hard conversations. And then we have them in these like we make ourselves just a little bit uncomfortable every day. And then our resilience builds.
Okay. A lot of this sounds like it's going to take a lot of work for people, even just for individuals, because they're always going to come across those people that are just going to be rams headbutting against them. Where do we find that courage to continue after we feel like we've been beaten down enough?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's those small steps, right? That you can't, you're always moving up and to the right. That's what we're always trying to do, is move up and to the right. But if you zoom in on this journey, it's going to be up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down, right? Like, that's what it's got to look like. And that's where the grace piece comes in, is we have to know you don't have to fight every fight.
Sure.
Like, you're no less of an activist, no less of an advocate, no less of an ally if you let one slide every now and then, honestly, because you get really tired, and that's okay. It's okay. Give yourself a break to do that. And also, we spend so much time. It's like you have the one like uncle in your family who's adamantly against the things that you believe in.
Right.
And you get sucked into just banging your head. Like, you ram your head against the wall, just like you said.
Yeah.
Well, there's dozens of other people in the family to talk to, right? Like, I don't have to change someone's mind.
Right.
to be on this journey. Like sometimes you just kind of let them go. You just kind of agree to disagree and you move on, and you're much more efficient being authentic in other spaces because you're not going to do it where you don't feel safe. Right. So you find those little pockets, you find a couple of those people that you can be authentic with, and you don't waste your time on the people. You still engage, you still kind of use your practice, but changing a single person's mind, getting stuck on that is just gonna, I mean, that treadmill, you're never gonna win.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So you just gotta let that one go. You can go back to it. You can do whatever, but you find these little pockets, because I think when we practice authenticity, when we start to have these harder conversations, when we have these open and honest things, when we push our comfort zone, whether that's with the brain, for some people, that's like sending back the wrong coffee at the coffee shop, right? Like there's little things like, it's too hard. I don't want to do it. Makes me feel uncomfortable, right? When we push that in whatever way we need to, the positive reinforcement cycle is tremendous. We just need to start doing it. And then the one person where we're banging our head against the wall doesn't seem as impactful.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Ash, I can't believe 30 minutes has already gone by.
Amazing.
I'll be honest with you. This has been a fantastic conversation. I can't thank you enough for coming on. Before we do move on, is there anywhere, like, if my team wants to learn more about you, and especially like to find your book, where can they go?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. The book is at all, online at all the natural places. If you want to do an independent bookseller, if you go through my website, that's an independent bookseller that way. Either way you want to do it. So it's ashbeckham.com. And then I'm on all the socials at Ash Beckham. Instagram, I was a little late to the party, so it's at the Ash Beckham. But I would love to connect with anybody. All the contact forms are there, and love having this conversation.
Fabulous. Thanks again. And I hope you continue to enjoy yourself, because it's time for my speed round.
Ooh, that's right. Yeah, let's do it.
All right, just to explain to you what this is again, Ash. I'm going to start playing some music. That music's going to last about 60 seconds. Just keeps me in mind of where we are in the timing. During that 60 seconds, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. They are completely innocuous, simple questions. The objective is for you to answer as many as you can within that 60 seconds, so we get to know you a little bit better. But also, if you're feeling at all competitive, we have hit 15 this season, but we've yet to top it. So if you're feeling up to it, let's see if we can't break that today.
I like it.
All right. As soon as you hear the music, I will ask the first question, and away we go. What's your name?
Ash.
How many kids do you have?
2.
Do you have any pets?
2 cats.
If you could ask your cat a question, get an answer, what would you be?
Why do you keep scratching the couch?
Which of your 2 children is your favorite?
Oh, God. Right now, the older one.
What's your best childhood memory?
Ooh, I loved learning how to ride a bike.
Favorite holiday?
Oh, Thanksgiving.
If you could be any cartoon character, which one would you choose to be?
Ooh, Bugs Bunny.
What's one choice you truly regret?
Oh, God. That's a long one. I was unfaithful to a previous partner.
Okay. Favorite book?
Ooh, I'm writing Whole Brain Child right now.
Favorite ice cream?
Oh, vanilla.
Where would you like to live except for your own house?
Ooh, by the ocean, Mexico.
13, my friend.
Ah!
13. It's not easy.
I gotta meet the person that did 15.
Well, you can always go back and, watch my other episodes.
That's right. I'll get there.
Thank you again, Ash. I really enjoyed this. You were fantastic. I see now why, you are becoming the sensation that you were meant to be.
Oh, I appreciate it, Rich. It's such a great conversation. Thanks for making it so easy and for all y'all do.
Thank you. And thank you, my team out there. That's it. We are wrapping up yet another episode of Team Building Saves the World. If you've enjoyed this episode, whether you're new to the podcast or an old fan of the show, please be sure to share it with everyone you know, whether they're a coworker, a friend, a family member. It just helps us to share all this vital information. You can find out all about us, including all past episodes, at teambonding.com/podcast. You can also find us wherever you find your favorite podcasts, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you go to listen, we will be there. And don't forget to look for all of us on the social medias at Team Bond Podcast and leave us a message. Tell me whether you like the show or if you have an idea for a future topic for the podcast. I want to hear from you. So, before we say our farewells for this episode of Team Building Saves the World, please never forget, my friends, if you are within the sound of my voice, you're on my team now, and I am forever going to be on yours. So long, team. I'll see you next time.
It's been said that you learn more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. So why not put your coworkers to play with the help of the team at Team Bonding? Team Bonding was founded over 20 years ago with one simple question. How can employees have a great time while fostering strong, authentic bonds between people who work together? Their catalog of innovative events includes scavenger hunts, Jeopardy, and much more. Each activity, whether live, virtual, or hybrid, maximizes the impact of team building with an accent on fun. Visit teambonding.com to schedule your event now. Team Bonding, when you want seriously fun results.